Welcome to episode 3 of Peace Talks. It's a 9 episode experience streaming on YouTube and on my Facebook page and my Twitter/X account. Welcome everyone who's joining. Just wants to be a part of talking peace. Need to talk peace, which as I've been sharing in the first 2 episodes, I believe can lead us to some peace walks and peace work. It's very important that we connect those. It's just, increasingly, of course, difficult to hear about the violence, particularly at this point, the way that Palestinian people are dying violently from bombing and it's from my study been ongoing tragedy, not to this extent, certainly not with this amount of casualties, but this conflict where I think sometimes I hear the word conflict, right? It sounds like such a excuse me, weak word to describe what we're seeing and what's been happening with settlements and Palestinians being put out of their homes, and then bombings in Israel and bombings in Palestine and Gaza. Just a cycle. And as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called it, a descending spiral of violence. That's one of the reasons why, with this situation, just so tragic, with Israel strikes hitting a hospital today, a school, hospital area, rather, ambulance involved, a school, the number of children, but also adults. And then also, in Israel, the loss of life there, the deaths at the hands of Hamas, and the notion that to get to Hamas, there must be some deaths, some Palestinian lives, civilian lives lost, the kind of casualties of war. I've been struck by the nonchalance with which people, even some of our government leaders, have been talking about death. And I wonder if people would be as nonchalant if Palestinians were not brown people, if these were French, British, blonde-haired babies being bombed and missing their limbs and just the catastrophic violence that people are experiencing in Gaza. If they didn't look the way they look, if people wouldn't just casually say, we just have to limit the amount of civilian casualties, like how much is enough? How much is too much? Who are we to determine how many lives we're willing to take in order to get to one group of people? And then the language that's grouping all Palestinians with Hamas is dangerous. The language that groups all Jewish people with the state of Israel is dangerous. More so than that, that even the grouping would okay people dying. It's just the nonchalance about human life. It's tragic. And if we're not careful, if we don't pay attention to it, we'll have astoundingly violent and harmful outcomes. And then there are those who are gathering information still as they're looking at reputable news sources show the violence and the things that are happening to Palestinian people, which at this point I believe is just an excuse not to say what has become obvious to me, that we are looking at violence against a people that is in no way acceptable and should not be justified. Um, and it's tragic that there are attempts to silence even peacemakers. I myself have experienced and looked at, having been for most of my life someone who would consider myself a peacemaker, who in what I do, I'm not always successful at it. I try to be unbiased and just love people and care about people's well-being. Now looking at any attempt to say, let's save Palestinian lives, be responded to with, we'll do this and their lives will be saved. The bartering, um, particularly with, but not only with, children. I think it's disastrous and grotesque, actually. If people poked fun at or made light of Palestinian lives being lost or Israeli lives. But now we have to admit that the harm currently, in addition to the hostages taken from Israel, is primarily coming upon Palestinian people. And so what do we do? Um, and again, I wonder uh, if these weren't brown people, Palestinian people, would there be this type of blasé attitude that I'm often seeing about them dying, not being hurt, not being injured, no longer living the arrogance of our thinking, that someone has to pay? I want to, in this episode, this 9-part experience, just talk a bit about no justice, no peace, and then I have a guest coming on in the next few days for part 2 of this. We see this slogan often. I want us to look at it ticking across the bottom here. We see this slogan often when people are protesting, no justice, no peace. And we may be wondering where it comes from, what's the basis of it. And so there are a lot of people calling for peace, ceasefire, release of hostages. We have to dig into what that means. And I believe in Dr. King's definition or quote on peace, where he said true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. I think in every area of our lives, then we would have to examine what justice looks like, even relationally, where it's not just the absence of tension, but we're actually attentive to if someone's harmed us personally. For instance, if a spouse has been unfaithful, because some of this stuff we need to talk about relationally. These things cause us to have mental health challenges and be unwell spiritually and then physically, and lend themselves to some of the thoughts we even have about what's going on globally, because we just don't deal with these concepts the way we should. Justice, peace, love. What do they mean? What are the practical components? So if I'm going to say I can't have true peace without justice, I need to know what justice is. And then here's Dr. King again. He says justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. That's different than retaliation. What we're seeing now is retaliation, just full on, at the cost of people who had nothing to do with what happened on October 7th. Didn't take any hostages, didn't slaughter anyone, who are now by the thousands. And I'm still seeing people disputing that. I'm like, what do you believe? So all of a sudden there's selective belief in outlets that I've seen people retweet and post before, and suddenly they don't believe them anymore, just because of the side they've taken. And then what if we just take the side of peace and justice, which means we wouldn't be neutral. We would actually have to say whatever is harming Palestinians needs to stop. Occupation, checkpoints. Today I saw a video on NPR where tags have been put on Palestinian workers by Israeli forces. Um, just things you don't want to see. That's a sign of disregard for humanity. And some may look and say it's justified and say, well, Hamas did this in Israel. And then someone's going to come back and say, this is the history that preceded this. I want to tell you right now, what justice means to me, what peace means to me, is we better get it together, because we really are ushering in our non-existence. This debating over how many people, Palestinians, have died, when you can see and look, it's in the thousands. Is it 5? Is it 8? Reports from sources that I trust say it's 8,000 plus. If you don't believe that, then wouldn't 2,000 be too much for you? I'm just wondering, like, why is that even something that we're looking at, saying we want to spend our time on social media debating what, if it was one child, would be a tragic loss of life, too much, one too many, to be paying for the decisions of grown people who could choose another path. And I know we look and we say, well, there is no other path. It's because we're accustomed to war. Instead of negotiation and peace, somebody has to pay. Something has to happen. And I certainly, with the history of my people group, I consider everyone in the world my people. With my ethnicity, my background, I certainly understand a desire for vengeance. I understand grappling and struggle over land and reparations and things we believe are owed our ancestors and then owed us. But I also believe something that a lot of faith leaders seem to be missing, that my highest divine calling is to love God and to love my neighbor. And when Christ mentions that in the Gospels, not just one Gospel, not just two, it's 4, and they mentions it in 3, goes back to an Old Testament scripture about loving God and loving our neighbor, that I don't believe that's relative to shade of skin, ethnicity, background, who lived on what land, who should have had it 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Somebody, as Dr. King said, has got to have some sense in this world. So when we talk about no justice, no peace, where are the people who are saying we're going to sit down and work out what justice looks like in this situation? How do we correct with love those things that stand against love, and ensure that Israeli children, Palestinian children, Middle Eastern children, any children across the globe never face these moments again, that there are no more tags put on Palestinian people? There are no more people at music festivals who are enduring violence and violated in tragic, gross ways. There's no more people coming and put out of their homes in the West Bank. No more Palestinians suffering that. Just all over. And what's wrong with talking about what's happening in totality in this situation? I'll tell you, if we don't figure out what justice is and begin to look at it as something much higher than revenge or retaliation, but actually realignment with our capacity to love and care and do what's right and morally sound, then more and more, I believe we're getting to that place where um, our time is ticking out, and it won't matter anymore whose side we were on. Yeah? It'll just matter that we're over. And we don't believe that's true, but we live in an age of nuclear war. So I say some of us don't believe that's true. Some of us are preaching and teaching end time prophecy to the extent that we're no good here on earth. And I know some people probably have unfollowed me because they want to talk spiritual talk and talk about the sweet by and by and pray for the peace of Israel, instead of talking about our call and our mandate to be a part of ending suffering for people who right now are being bombed at a rate that they're not getting air. uh, dying and dying and dying. And we have to ask, what would be enough, even if we believed in revenge and retaliation as recompense for what happened? Uh, these are hard questions. I'm asking them because I sincerely believe when I talk to my Jewish neighbors and when I talk to my Palestinian neighbors, that I have a responsibility to them to say no justice, no peace. And when I say that, I mean that if we don't talk about and align peace talks, if we don't talk about and align things in a way that we correct even what got us to this escalation, severe escalation, horrible escalation of violence, then we'll just go back and it'll be repeated over and over and over again. And then we have leaders who should be, and I use that term just based on position in this instance, who should be ambassadors and able to sit down at tables and negotiate for what's in the best interest. Of course, if they're American politicians of America, but also of humanity. Um, it's rough, right? It's rough. And I'm hearing from people who just don't know what to say and don't know what to do and don't want to appear to be cowards, but also don't want to just jump out there and say something that will eventually be wrong. And everybody should be okay saying we need to stop the killing of people in Gaza. I just believe that. Everybody should be able to say that we need to ensure that hostages are released. All hostages, everybody. And if people can't say that, then I wonder about our understanding of justice and peace. Because we're going to get justice. What does that mean to a child in the middle of the night who wakes up to find themselves under rubble? What does our justice mean to a child that's now missing their limbs, or their mother is no longer around, or a mother who won't get to raise her child because her child has been blown up because of choices and our acquiescence to war? No justice, no peace. If we don't realign ourselves as human beings in every area of our lives, if we don't allow love to live in us and breathe through us, if we don't succumb to, yield to being love and being vessels for love in order to correct those things that stand against love legislatively, regionally, in relationships between nations and people groups, then we'll never get to peace. And true peace is not merely the absence of tension. Again, Dr. King said it is the presence of justice. We won't get there. And so, these are some of these 30-minute time frames of peace talks. It's just rough stuff to dig through. And now I know you might be able to tell, talking out loud, trying to figure out what's wrong with us. What happened? Because of course I believe, it's my belief, that we were made in the image of the divine. We have great capacity. But then I also realized I might have a different perception of or understanding of the divine of God. Some people believe God's a warmonger. So if I start talking about no justice, no peace, they'll start talking about, well, God believed in slaying people and hurting people and all those types of things. So it all depends. And that's why what I also know is nobody's religion or faith should be guiding world issues, unless that it's a faith that connects us as a world house and causes us to say, I believe something that's about loving my neighbor. And so in my faith is my morality, which includes justice and peace. But even that doesn't mean that that should be the only religion that is cultivated and taught and shared around the world. We just have some crap to fix, no justice, no peace. A lot of people out there talking peace. If you thought I was just going to be saying for 9 30-minute episodes let's just get along. They're not welcome to Vonnetta's world, where I know we have some real digging in to do. And so that's why there will be a part two, possibly a part three of just this topic, no justice, no peace, where we will dissect what justice looks like. If we can't have peace without justice, we need to figure it out. We need to figure it out. What are the things we need to line back up? Because of my bent and my study and my practice of nonviolence, Kenyan nonviolence, and my faith, which long before I studied Dr. King, I studied the life and decided to follow the life examples of Christ. This brings me here that even when people talk about being quote unquote Christian, when the more some people talk, the more I realize that we don't believe the same thing. And so even I have kind of divested myself of that term, that banner, because I can't afford to be connected to folks who believe it's okay to pray for Israel, but not pray for Palestinians. I won't do it. And I would not be connected to, in a sense of saying we believe the same thing, people who believe it's okay to be anti-Semitic and to ransack and destroy synagogues. I don't feel like, again, as Dr. King pointed out, I have to segregate my morals. I don't believe that I have to care about heterosexual people, but not LGBTQ people. I don't believe that. I don't, and I pray that I never will, because I believe if we don't allow ourselves to be used by love to line humanity back up with love, we won't get to peace. So no justice, no peace. Not in the Middle East, not in our homes, not in our schools, not in our legislative bodies, not in any area of our lives, our art, our entertainment. If we don't allow love to use us to realign humanity with love, we will not have peace. So then we have decisions to make, even in our social media commentary about how we want to let love use us or not, to line humanity back up with love. And the things we grapple with, we struggle with today, I can't say that because people will be offended by that. Then we need to start to dig in and question why we're struggling with those things. Do this today. Examine your understanding of justice and peace. It's our charge today. To examine our understanding of justice and peace. No justice, no peace. I'm going to challenge myself today for the next few days to really dig into anything that I may find in me that will cause me not to hear pain, not to hear inhumanity, not to see injustice, not to be clear that something will take us off path as human beings. Anything in me that embraces revenge and retaliation in ways that cause us to be on a descending spiral of violence. Because I want to be a part of a peace movement. That's why I'm talking peace. I want to fill our airwaves, our social media, our conversations every day with peace, but not that fake stuff where it's just we're gonna not have tension and we want to just try to get along no matter what. But real, true, tangible peace where we've been mature and we've been love centered, and we worked through some stuff. And I think that's why it's important that a part of what we're calling for with Gaza, with Israel, with Palestinians and Israeli people is true peace, which includes justice. That will take some talking about history, but also a determination that we're going to have real reconciliation, which means agreement that going forward, this is how we're going to engage each other with justice. We're not going to make all people pay for what some people are doing in a group. We're going to be attentive to how this is affecting our children. We're going to agree that we're going to move forward, and it's going to be just, and not just in the interest of one group, but both groups. And hopefully, we'll get to the place where we have justice and peace. I think that would be the goal. This is it's important that we dig deeper, And I know it's folks out there who are praying for peace, and I believe that's important. But peace is something we're having to work through, and we're going to have to talk it out, but then also walk it out and work it. And so justice absolutely is something that we're going to have to determine that we're going to be a part of. So you can say today, I'm going to be a vessel, I'm going to let love use me to realign humanity with love. I like that. And of course, to all who are mourning in our world house, in our global community, as the church that I pastor says, the globe is our neighborhood. Goodness, I don't even know what to pray sometimes for people who no longer have their parents or their children or their grandparents. Some people have lost entire families, bombed and slaughtered. Pray that the God of comfort is with you, the God who I know loves all and cares about all and came for all. And no matter what some may believe, I don't believe, based on the heart of God I've experienced, that God is concerned about region and territory as we are. I believe that God is spirit. And as Christ told the woman at the well in the book of John, that day is coming, that hour is coming, that we who worship God will worship him in spirit and in truth, not even about location. And so let's get it together. No justice, no peace.